Hello everybody and welcome to your Game Week 9 Essential Deadline News. And as always, we're talking to the big man Ben Dinnery here today. Slav Joe has said it's BJ time, which it is indeed. It's your BJ on a Friday. But also, Ben, you've got a massive cock on your background, just over your right shoulder.
Thanks for pointing that out, Jason. Very, very kind of you to notice. Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I've had a massive cock for quite a long time now, and I'm surprised you haven't noticed it before. But just sitting underneath said cock is the chocolate bar that I actually bought you, the Arsenal chocolate bar. So you have got a little bit of conflict in the Tottenham cockerel and the red Guna chocolate bar underneath, which, by the way, will be winging its way to your good self in the very near, not too distant future.
Goodness me. I don't know if people like cock on their chocolate or not, but we shall see. Brian Morrissey has said, good Lord, very interesting opening that we're going for today. I guess we're in a weird vibe as well because it is coming up to Halloween. We're in a cheery mood. Before we get into the show, have you got any kind of plans that you've got? Because obviously you got your little ones. Do you have to do anything particularly Halloweeny for them?
Hate it. Absolutely hate it. Despise it. So I will try to get out the house first and foremost, because the trick-or-treating in this area absolutely does me nothing. So if I can get out and do something, I will. Last year, I think Newcastle under 21s played Sunderland in a local derby. So we went out to St James's Park and watched that game. This year, I think it does coincide with the game for the Newcastle Eagles. So if I can, I managed to, convince the little one with a couple of, bags of sweets, we might head off to the basketball. Will I get dressed up? Not me, but the kids may don something for if we do go to that basketball match.
Fair enough. And everybody in the comments, do let us know if you're dressing up, getting involved with Halloween. I've got things planned already. I've set up the house. I'm much more into it than you, Ben. Don't know if you're judging me or not, but we shall continue. Let's get into the injury news before my ego is injured by some comment of yours. So as always with the injury news, if you don't get your question answered, or if you have any kind of follow-ups, you can always head over to the Premier Injuries website. We've got the famous English Premier League injury table there. Every team, every kind of player that is injured, you can look it up there. But people are here for the Game Week 9 predicted lineups, the latest injury news. Have your questions at the ready, and we're going to go for it alphabetically as always. And as always, we start with AFC Bournemouth. So what is the latest with them?
Yeah, I mean, good news generally overall for the Cherries. Off the pitch, the treatment room is slowly beginning to clear. We've seen the return of Lloyd Kelly to the training pitches. Whether he's fit enough to be ready to start this weekend remains to be seen. We also seen Chris Mepham feature for Wales during the international break, so that got some much needed game time into his legs. And also summer signing Alex Scott. Now he's been out since August with a knee problem, meniscal tear. He's nearing a turn, but it's probably going to be too soon. Now it remains to be seen whether Areola does make wholesale changes. The Cherries yet to win, one of only two teams yet to win in the Premier League this season. But you could argue maybe the performance last time out at Goodison Park, where they went into that fixture in high hopes of maybe picking up the victory. They left there on the end of a wrong side of a 3-0 drubbing. So you could probably, a really bad performance. So whether Areola does make wholesale changes or not remains to be seen. This is a starting lineup that I may tweak, like I say, a little bit later on, if anybody indeed from that Bournemouth team does pique your interest.
So moving from Bournemouth to Arsenal, there's a lot more interest in the Gunners. And I guess the big kind of discussion point is, will he, won't he, over Bukayo Saka? My kind of reading of it, but obviously you're the injury expert, Arteta's comments weren't 100% clear today over whether he will start or he won't. It's kind of the smoke and mirrors classic Arteta. But you've put him in that starting lineup. Is that for certain, or are you still kind of a bit wary over that?
Yeah, I'm a little bit wary. I mean, heading into that Manchester City game, all of the noise coming from Arsenal, and certainly Mikel Arteta was to talk about he's in contention. I've spoke to the medical department, he's in contention, although he wouldn't, be drawn down in any kind of definitive answer. And that was pretty much the same today. What we do know is Bukayo Saka has been working. He was given a few days off to rest and recover with this game in mind. I'm looking primarily at that mechanism of injury, and that was the Champions League against Lyon when he attempted that back heel. That would suggest that we're probably looking at a hamstring issue that's pretty high up, and they tend not to be too serious, and therefore that would put him in the sort of realms of pushing for a return to the side. And like I say, I just have a sneaky feeling that Arteta has been fairly coy, and we may see him back in that Gunners starting 11.
And so with the rest of the team, Martinelli, he played fabulously against Manchester City, got the winning goal. And you think that's enough for him to earn his starting place straight away again?
Yeah, I mean, it was a surprise that the Brazilian was actually even making the matchday squad against Manchester City. That was slightly ahead of schedule. And so it was probably a little bit of a risk and a gamble by Mikel Arteta bringing him on in that game. But, like I say, that risk and reward, and ultimately it proved to be an excellent decision. They get the result, and he comes through that after another 2 weeks of training under his belt. That puts him in a lot better position. And I just think on the back of that performance, then certainly he deserves a start in that team.
And I found it quite interesting this week. Maybe it's sorted out the question marks over Ramsdale Raya. Will he, won't he? Seems like Ramsdale is out in the cold, from the latest interview he gave. He's upset with the scenario. So I guess, from your point of view, that's one thing that you won't worry about in the future in terms of team selection.
Yeah, certainly it looks anyway for this moment in time that David Raya has that goalkeeper's jersey, and it's his to lose. You certainly don't make decisions like that, or managers don't, often make decisions where they're flip-flopping between two goalkeepers. It was a big decision to drop Aaron Ramsdale as that first choice goalkeeper. And yes, there have been a few sticky moments for David Raya, but I expect Mikel Arteta to stick with him. I think primarily it's his use of the ball with his feet that Mikel Arteta likes, and he likes to build up from the back. He likes to try and create that pockets of space for the team to transition quickly through, and it's been effective to that. And who can really argue? They're unbeaten in the league up to this point. They're just coming off the back of that win over the champions, so confidence is high. And yeah, like I say, who's to question the manager when they've had such a I think you even coined the term. It hasn't been vintage, but they've done what's necessary under difficult circumstances with some key players missing through injury, long term as well, and they still managed to grind out those results.
Yeah, and I guess the other question mark was over Salah, but I think from even the press conference, that's clear he's going to be okay.
Yeah, this is nothing new. It was revealed by the French Football Federation that it was a chronic, ongoing toe issue that needs to be managed, and they used this opportunity during the international break just to ease the centre half out and give him that much needed recovery time. It may be something that we need to keep an eye on with fixtures in quick succession and maybe looking forward, but certainly for now, again, although Mikel Arteta did talk about, well, we'll see how he performs in that last session, I'd be very, very, very surprised if he wasn't involved. I think he's one of only two players who played every minute in the Premier League this season. So yeah, he might have had it for a few weeks, but it doesn't seem to be hampering him too much.
So we move to Aston Villa, and I guess, there's obviously people out, but not much has really changed over the international break.
Yeah, not in terms of personnel. It's pretty much as you were. There could be a slight tweak in formation. We've seen the return of Diego Carlos in recent times, and we've seen this sporadically from Unai Emery, again, depending on team availability and those players. But I think the three centre-halves work much better with Luca Digne and Matty Cash playing in those higher roles in that 3-5-2 while attacking. So that's why we went with this and Diaby to partner Ollie Watkins in attack. We have seen slight tweaks around this formation, but shouldn't be too far from the mark.
And I guess, we always have to ask it because people do it every week. Alex Moreno, the latest from Unai Emery was before the international break that hopefully he'll be back after the international break. But has he even trained over that time period?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's taken part in aspects of training, a lot of individual work, still not fully integrated with the squad. Of course, these ongoing hamstring problems, surgery, they're very difficult to manage. You don't want to take any chances. And of course, with the form of Lucas Digne, that takes the pressure off the Villa boss. And, again, performance-wise, they're on the need to cut any corners with this. So while he's in that fortunate position, then he can take his time with Alex Moreno, and hopefully when he does come back, he'll stay fit, and he will be competing with Lucas Digne for that left back spot.
Now, this international period has, I guess, been an important one for Brentford. There's been quite a few injuries and some other things to talk about as well. But also, I guess Bryan Mbeumo didn't use that opportunity to kind of get back into form. So he's going to have to use this Burnley game, and people are going to have continuing questions because the team just haven't looked as good recently. So are there positive updates for the team news? Can we be expecting a stronger team? And also give your thoughts on the Mbeumo situation.
Yeah, certainly. First and foremost, this is one that will be tweaked. Keane Lewis-Potter has a calf problem, so he's out. So there will be a slight tweak. We will see, I think, the Bees revert back to that 4-3-3 formation. And I had comments on the Twitter timeline, is it almost time to use the dreaded C word for Brentford, given the number of players that they've got out of contention? I think I actually responded by saying, well, look, if Ethan Pinnock was to miss out, then maybe, we can start thinking about that. There was no mention from Thomas Frank with Ethan Pinnock. He was withdrawn from international duty because of an Achilles issue. So we're hoping, or certainly the Brentford supporters will be hoping, that no news is good news in that regard. Ben Mee is more or less there. Ideally, he wouldn't be thrown straight in because of back-to-back calf problems. He's spent the latest one, I think he picked it up at St James's Park around a month ago. He's had a couple of sessions with the team, so he's there or thereabouts, but certainly not ready for a start. And yeah, the Bryan Mbeumo started the season really, really well. Who doesn't love an out-of-position player? Defaulted back to midfield in FPL, but predominantly plays in a more attacking role. And looked, with Jon Wissa, looked to be answering, filling that mantle left by Ivan Toney. Brentford started really well, and then they've just went off the boil a little bit, and I think that's across the board for Brentford, not just Bryan Mbeumo. So there's no goals in that last block of fixtures between those two international breaks. But Brentford aren't playing too bad. Underlying data suggests that a win, 3 points, a good performance in a result, maybe just around the corner. Difficult, like I say, when you're going away on these international games, long travel. Some teams, the qualifiers and competitive versus non-competitive matches. So, you don't have much of a chance to find that groove and that blend, with not much training time. So I tend not to try and read too much into those international games. Maybe, it was just a good opportunity for a change of scenery, get some sun on his back, and then hopefully, he comes back and we see Brentford kick on again during this next block of games.
Yeah, I was just hoping that maybe he might get a few goals or a goal involvement just to pick up that confidence again, but obviously he hasn't. However, it's a good game against Burnley to push on and potentially build that confidence once again. A team that aren't lacking in confidence and playing very well this season is Brighton, but my goodness, what a difficult game for them. You've written about this for 888, kind of talking about your beliefs. But yeah, just do you want to talk about, your feelings for this game against Manchester City?
Well, I mean, City, first and foremost, will welcome back Rodri. They lost all 3 games, which is basically unheard of under Pep Guardiola, 3 games in his absence. So his importance to the team, and it's not just down to the Spaniard, but his importance to the team is absolutely massive. He provides that solid foundation and that opportunity, for others to play in and around, does a lot of the dirty work. And there's nobody quite like him in that Manchester City midfield. So we'll see him back. And with Brighton, the difficulty that we have with Roberto De Zerbi, he's a manager who's been making a lot of changes. We've seen some great performances, and they've probably, in my eyes anyway, they've probably exceeded expectations up until this point, following the departures of Alex McAllister and also Moses Caicedo. But look, what you're going to get is you're going to get some great games like they did, I would say, against Newcastle, where they absolutely bossed us and played us off the park. And then on the flip side, you're going to get the odd game like you've seen maybe against West Ham. I think they lost 3-1 at home. And more importantly, the one at Villa Park where they got absolutely drubbed 6-1 by the Villains. So look, on paper, I think this is just going to be a great game for the neutral. Should be really entertaining. I'm expecting to see lots of chances, lots of goal-mouth opportunities. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if the Seagulls were to get a share of the spoils and maybe, pick up a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw.
Slavcho said he was a little bit delayed and just joined, and he said it's the best opening he's ever seen to one of our videos. So there you go. If people missed that, I guess... slight adult warning there. Innuendo was well played about there. So just kind of continuing with the news. Burnley up next. Another one that we're not too, people not too much interest, but I guess any quick updates there, Ben?
No specifics really from Vincent Kompany. We never really do. Keeps his cards very close to his chest. However, he did say that injury problems are beginning to ease. So there are quite a few players coming back. Potentially that sees maybe the return of Manuel Benson. A lot of hype about him pre-season, but yet to see it in the Premier League. Johan Berg Gudmundsson, Nathan Redmond, they're also on the cusp of return. And also El Daki, he was withdrawn from the Belgium squad during the break, but he should be okay to take his place in defence.
And Jordan Bayer, a lot of people interested in him. The kind of latest news is probably November. He'll be back, a couple of weeks out. Any progress on that?
Yeah, a lot better than initially feared. There were concerns that he maybe could be out for a lengthy spell on the sidelines, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The injury has settled down a little bit. So, yeah, if we get a return before the next international break, then I think that's going to be a bonus for the Clarets.
Now we're going to move to Chelsea, and you've got Jackson starting up front. A lot of people had an interest in Broja. I certainly did. I thought maybe he might be the answer to the question that they've had such a long time of who's going to be a quality striker for the team. But he missed out during the international break. The kind of news there was that he arrived, he trained, he didn't feel right. What is the kind of latest there? And also, Chelsea are a team where the C word has been bandied around because they have so many injuries as well. But yeah, first of all, let's start with that Broja not inclusion in your 11.
Yeah, so he's unavailable for this weekend, first and foremost. And yeah, exactly right. He did train with the national team, but given the fact that he's returning off that long-term knee problem, ACL reconstruction, they're not taking any chances. They work closely with the Chelsea medical department and decided to send him back to Cobham. Now, it's been described as an irritation in that knee. And like I say, those road to recovery long-term are rarely smooth and straightforward. So these minor knocks and niggles are to be expected. So he is working on the training pitches, but like I say, just not in contention, which is why Nicholas Jackson, who had surgery on his wrist during the break, that forced his withdrawal from France. That's why we have him leading the Chelsea front line.
And just talk us through the rest of the team, because, the defence is decimated. There's another kind of problem with Reece James. Obviously, Chilwell is out. Even the kind of centre-back situation is not clear. Talk us through the back line of Chelsea, because that's probably been one of their only positives this season, and maybe it might turn into a negative now, that the fact that they've lost so many personnel.
Yeah, well, potentially we could have up to 7 players returning for Chelsea this weekend. That would still leave 7 players on the sidelines, but it just suggests that there is a bit of an ease in there. Chelsea coming off the back of consecutive wins. that back four. We've seen Mark Cucurella switch from the left to the right. That was mainly out of necessity, given the fact that Malo Gusto was suspended, Reece James injured. Now, both of those players should be in contention. Certainly, Gusto is free from his ban, and Reece James, a couple of issues and a suspension for himself thrown in there, hamstring, knee, that one match ban for clashing with match official after the Aston Villa game. There was some talk that there was a little bit of a niggle in that knee. Not 100%. He has trained well for the last few days, so I don't think he's fit enough to start just yet. That's why we have Cucurella there. Disasi withdrawn from the internationals as well. He looks to be fine. He's been back on the training pitches. But elsewhere, like I say, Cole Palmer is probably the only one in this starting 11 who has a slight doubt. And he was withdrawn from the under-21s. Lee Carsley actually described that as being a minor knock, a dead leg. I think I posted something out on social media, and we've covered this before in a couple of videos quite a while back. 99% of those dead leg injuries, absolutely fine. Painful, yes, but you should be okay, given, that turnaround, which I think is around about maybe 7 to 8 days for Cole Palmer. Exceptions to the rule. The Christian Ziga is the one that I always talk about, thought he was going to lose his life, and the Leeds midfielder, whose name escapes me, but thought he was going to lose his leg. So like I say, not all dead legs, impact injuries are the same, but in this instance I do expect Cole Palmer to be past fit.
Was it Rafinha for Leeds?
It was Rafinha. Got it in one. I knew you'd remember.
Injury news expert.
Yeah.
Let's continue. So we're going to go to Crystal Palace now. And this is a team, I guess, another one flirting with the C word in terms of lots of injuries. But I think a big one, just initially looking at that 11 there, Decore back in the team, that's a big boost for them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have been grinding out results. Despite the loss of several key players within this Eagles squad. Jefferson Lerma isn't in the start 11, and again, he's another one that I may look to bring in. It would probably be Riedeveld, who went off in the last game because of an adductor problem. He's maybe one that could make way. Jeffrey Sloop, he's injured, so that's a definite change for that team. That's a hamstring problem, also picked up in Nottingham Forest, so there's a slight tweak to be made there. But elsewhere within the Eagles squad, it pretty much picks itself. Like I say, given the injury situation, summer signing Franca, that was a lower back issue, stress related or stress response. He's been training with the first team, so like I say, there's a possibility that he could maybe be included on the bench at St James's Park.
And with Palace, I think one of the problems has been, with all these injuries, creativity. They don't have Eze, they don't have Elise. What's the kind of updates with them? Because Eze was pre-international break, about 5 or 6 weeks, November was it? And then Elise's kind of an unsure situation, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we've had a couple of setbacks with Elise, so that's the difficulty that we've had, maybe pinning down a precise return to play timeline for him. So at the minute, like I say, there's nothing definitive, and he's one that will be tread very carefully with regards to his reintegration because of those setbacks. Eze, fingers crossed, hopefully. I think Palace now play game week 10 on the Friday. That's probably going to come too soon. The game after that is maybe, if I'm right, Burnley in game week 11. That's the target for Eze. So fingers crossed, all being well, he'll make that one. But like I say, with hamstring injuries, you can never, guarantee those returns given the complexities around re-injury and recurrence.
So switching our attention to Everton now. Let me just read this comment here. Sorry, joining late, catching up. Why is West Ham's goalie managing Bournemouth, Ben? You said Areola was the manager of Bournemouth.
Areola? Hold on. I'm just trying to think of me. And Andoni Areola. It's definitely a problem with these speakers. Again, sorry. I mean, the amount of comments we get from people who've got audio difficulties, it's becoming a little bit boring because this end, everything is perfect.
Yeah, 99% people can hear Iraola absolutely fine.
Yeah.
It's them. It's them.
Yeah. It's you.
So focusing it on Everton, and that's why we use the kind of pictures as well, so people know what we're talking about.
Because we have no idea what we're talking about.
Not at all. Sorry about that, Mark. They're in a good position now in terms of injuries, aren't they? You know, they're getting back to the best 11 probably. Calvert-Lewin looks in good form. And I think because of that, it's reflected in probably 2 of the last 3 weeks. They scored a lot of goals, which has been hard to come by for them. So maybe things are turning for them.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think the return of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's massive. We all know the importance of the striker to this Toffees team. Last 2 years have been a bit of a nightmare for him, and Everton have struggled. It's no coincidence that he comes back into the team and all of a sudden they start scoring goals and they start winning games. So look, I think Sean Dyche has managed the situation really, really well. The temptation has always been by previous managers to throw him back in there. Sean Dyche hasn't done that. He's really took his time. He's looked to manage that situation, manage that reintegration really carefully. And now, he's hopefully reaping the rewards of that. So it's great to see, and fingers crossed he can stay and remain fit for the rest of the season. Everton will need him. I think the Toffees will be unchanged. We've seen a late change last time out, and that was because Idrissa Gueye picked up a problem in the warm-up. He went into the game with a slight heel issue. He complained of that pre-match. So I think it was Unana who come back into that team, and he performed really, really well, got the result. Jack Harrison as well, that might have been his first start against Bournemouth. Of course, he's joined on loan from Leeds. A hip problem's been hampering him from the majority of last season and spent most of the summer trying to recover from that. He's come in, he provides a lot of energy. He's a good player. And again, I think he makes this Everton team a lot stronger. So this is going to be a good Merseyside derby, and it's a tough one to call. I'm certainly not expecting Liverpool to go out and steamroller Everton. I think it will be tight. And again, it wouldn't surprise me maybe if Everton could come away with a share of the spoils, maybe 1-1.
Martin Keenan says he wants an update with Tariq Lamptey. He said he missed it. So what is the latest there? Yeah,
unfortunately, Lamptey's out. I think he played his third 90 minutes of the year at Marseille in the Europa League. Roberto De Zerbi said that he wasn't going to risk him against Liverpool in that 2-2 draw, and it transpires that he still hasn't recovered from a minor muscle issue. Now, that obviously means there's problems on that left-hand side. Igor Julio, the Brazilian, is one possible replacement. But as we've seen against Liverpool, Roberto De Zerbi isn't afraid to change things up, and he stuck Solly March in at left-back with Adringa going on the right-hand side of that 3. So he may look to set up in a similar way again. So, yeah, Lamptey's out, unfortunately.
Now, Fulham, difficult game week for them. What is the latest with their injury news, though?
We were expecting to see maybe 1, potentially 2 returners. Kenny Tete is one that Marco Silva has described as just a minor muscle issue previously, but now we're talking in excess of a month on the sidelines, so he's certainly not back. And also the news with regards to Tyson, that was a non-contact foot injury. Said he heard a bit of a crack. Again, there hasn't been anything definitive. Assessments continue, meeting with a specialist, but we're looking at a significant spell out, certainly several weeks. Otherwise, it's pretty much as you were for the Cottagers.
And so from the Cottagers on to Liverpool, a lot of interest in them, especially because of the international situation. A lot of question marks over the players. A few of them were rested last time, but you've put most of those that have travelled quite far into the team.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear from Jurgen Klopp that I think Liverpool have played twice as many games as the next team in that early kickoff following an international break. And of course they did last time out. And I had a quick look through the data, and I think Jurgen Klopp made 3 changes for that game. So not a great deal of changes, but a couple of those who started the game came off at half-time, one of those being Alexi McAllister. Slightly different this time around in terms of when those South American World Cup qualifying matches were played. They were actually kicked off during the early hours of Wednesday morning, around about midnight to 1 a.m. British summertime or Greenwich Mean Time, whatever race we're in. So there's, a little bit longer in terms of that recovery, and both Diaz and McAllister were spotted on the training pitches on Thursday. So, they got back nice and early. So therefore, that should put them in good stead for that Merseyside derby. Of course, it's a huge game, and Jurgen Klopp will want his big players. The main discussion point, or the talking point, was maybe who comes into that midfield in the absence of Curtis Jones. He serves a second game of a 3-match ban. I've actually went with Ryan Gravenberch in this instance, but we have seen, I think it was Harvey Elliott got the nod last time, but also there's a possibility that Endo is another one who could start. But for me, just given his performances in Europe, I think Gravenberch deserves that start. And I've also went Canate back in alongside Van Dijk, with Joel Matip, the unfortunate player, missing out.
And also, I guess the big news is Robertson out, Tsimikas in. What is the latest with Robertson? Because a lot of people are looking to bring Tsimikas in. Is that a good FPL transfer because he might be out for a while? I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, you should get your worth out of Tsimikas. It certainly looks as if Andy Robertson is going to have surgery on that shoulder. And if that's the case, typically we're looking at around about 10 to maybe 12 weeks on the sideline. So we may not see the Scotland international back in contention until early 2024. So like I say, that makes Tsimikas an appealing option. And of course, he should get the nod in that back line for Liverpool.
So from Liverpool, we are going over to Luton again. One of the teams, not a lot of interest. Do we skip this one, Ben?
Well, a couple of quick updates. Andros Townsend was signed as a free agent, I think, towards the beginning of the month. He scored for the under-21s recently, so he's potentially pushing to be involved in the matchday squad. Great to see him back in contention.
One thing about these smaller teams, like bringing in, I don't know, deadwood of other Premier League teams, they always say about experience, but I'd prefer them to, put that signing and wages towards somebody who's like young and give them an opportunity, because quite often it doesn't seem to work out. They often seem to just have high wages and a bit of a drain on the squad, and then a lot of undue attention. You've got Ross Barkley in there as well, kind of getting a lot of attention rather than maybe others in the squad. I don't know, what's your feelings on this, Ben?
I think it's difficult, and I wouldn't like to almost tar everybody with the same brush. The two players that you have mentioned, I don't see it as sort of one last payday for players who are coming to the end and they just want to sort of see out the time, maybe at the highest level. I really do think that both players may feel that they've still got a point to prove. Of course, Andros Townsend, we thought, and he actually thought himself, that it was a done deal and he would be signing for Burnley, following his release after recovering from that ACL injury that he suffered. So I still think, like I say, he still has that hunger, that point to prove. And also, within the dressing room and in and around, I think he's a good model professional. So I do quite like that signing. I think he brings something. And Ross Barkley, again, he's a bit of a forgotten man. He cast your mind back to his days at Everton and Chelsea, and he was, he was really sort of one of those players that you had maybe pinned for a really long and successful career, and it fell by the wayside a little bit. Spent some time out in France, worked hard during the summer to get himself fit, working individually. He's been brought back in, and look, the early weeks have been hampered by a hamstring problem, but if they can get him fit and then keep him fit, I certainly think, he does bring something to that Luton side, which they haven't got. He does have that little bit of quality to be able to unlock that door and create something. And they're going to need that if they're going to, stand any chance whatsoever of staying in the Premier League.
So Manchester City up next, always a hard one to predict. But like you said, Rodri is back. That's a huge boost to the team. But any other boosts and injury news we need to be aware of?
Kevin De Bruyne is the only player that we're expected to miss out through injury. Pep, straight bat in terms of when is he going to return? I don't know. The expectation is we're probably looking at around about January with regards to that, typically a 4 to 5 month recovery period following surgery on his hamstring. The other player that we have been talking about in terms of injuries in recent times, John Stones, had his first minutes for Manchester City in the Premier League against Arsenal, around 22 minutes, but got some valuable game time for England during the break.
And before the international break or near the start of the season, the message was John Stones will be back after the international break. And, we had a bit of a joke on here, which international break was it? Because it wasn't the last one. Is it this time around that he's going to be back? Why isn't he in the team? Because I think his abilities have been sorely missed as well. His ability to kind of nip back into defence, but also as a really good deep line playmaker in that kind of defensive mid position where Kovacic is. He's the much better player. What do you think in that scenario? Is it because they're handling him conservatively?
Yeah, I mean, we all know the strength and depth of this City squad, so I just think there are other players who are better placed at this point to start games. Pep Guardiola spoke about the importance of John Stones, and in particularly last season when he played in that hybrid role, and he was fantastic. And everybody sort of rushed out in FPL to bring him in at the start of the season and had those injuries. And like I say, it hasn't started yet. So maybe John Stones is really set for a big, next period, or certainly second half of the season when he plays himself back in. And ordinarily, John Stones would be one of those players that looks to start. But City play in the Champions League midweek. I think they play Swiss side Young Boys. That's maybe a lesser game in terms of comparing that to the intensity of the Premier League. And for me, that's maybe a better opportunity for John Stones to get some serious minutes under his belt.
Now off to the red side of Manchester. What is the latest for the Red Devils?
Yeah, lots going on here. Casemiro, first and foremost, picked up an ankle injury playing for Brazil. So he's still in his homeland at the moment. So that's why he's out of contention. We have Amrabat starting as well. He missed out the internationals due to an ongoing issue with his lower back. He has been spotted on the training pitches. So hopefully we're taking that as a good sign and he's going to sit there alongside. Of course, we have to start Scott McTominay. We've been banging his drums for a few weeks now, and I talk about McTominay in the same sort of vein as I do with Sean Longstaff at Newcastle. They do all of that horrible legwork that nobody else wants to do, and it allows the rest of the team, those players, the Bruno Fernandes of this world, to maybe concentrate on what they do best. And I do think there's a spot for McTominay in that team, and he does. This was before the result against Brentford when he got himself a couple of goals. I do think, like I say, he does change the dynamic of that team and he has to be in. The other consideration we maybe have is in defence. Rafael Varane returning, but I have started Harry Maguire ahead of Victor Lindelof. Of course, the atrocities during the week in Brussels. Victor Lindelof is ready to go, according to Eric Ten Hag, but I just think, it's been a long, draining week for the Sweden captain. And quite rightly, there are other things in play and other priorities and a lot going on. And I just think Harry Maguire done okay last time out, and that's why I have him keeping his place in that starting 11.
And just with the McTominay situation as well, for a while we said, where's the Scottish McTominay? Because for Manchester United, he's left out the team. He's not played to his best, but for Scotland, he's playing out of his skin. He's a joint second top scorer at the Euro qualifiers. I think this is another kind of indictment of Ten Hag's management, that he's not getting the best out of a really talented Manchester United, one of their own players,
Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't Scottish and he was maybe Spanish, Jose McTominay, maybe you would have got a little bit more game time. Show him a little bit of love. You know exactly what you're getting with McTominay. He's going to give 100%. He's going to run through walls for you. He's going to put everything on the line, and he's not going to give up until that final whistle is blown. And we've seen that against Brentford. So, he epitomises everything that Manchester United should be about. So he deserves a place in that team. And like I say, I do expect results to change and see a little bit of an upturn from the Red Devils, and he could be the catalyst for that.
Maybe it would be better if he was Scott van der McTominay, get a bit of the Dutch linkage in there.
That doesn't work for Van der Beek.
No, that's true. Actually, you're right. In terms of it, though, we got a question about Luke Shaw. What is the latest on him, Ben?
Not a lot to say in terms of where we are. Certainly hasn't been seen on the training pitches. Eric Ten Hag keeps his cards very close to his chest. Again, difficult ones. I think we've seen with the signing of Sergio Reguilon, that give us an indication that we certainly weren't expecting anything short term. It was something which maybe could stretch, into November. And it's one that we'll have to assess and evaluate on a week by week basis. Unfortunately, he's a player that does pick up a lot of injuries. Tyrell Malacia is another player who's been out long term. He's had surgery on his knee. So, look, it's difficult, but I'm not expecting to see Luke Shaw certainly at any point this month. So we're looking at November at the very best. But nothing official.
Yeah, well, we're moving on to Newcastle now, and there's a lot of questions about Botman. Gregor is the best, XD is his name. He's asked about whether Botman plays in game week 10. I think people are guessing that he's definitely not playing in game week 9. What is the kind of scenario there for Sven?
Yeah, the official line is as Botman has been progressing really well during that international break. This fortnight's come at a good time in terms of addressing that knee problem. So, certainly steps in the right direction. But again, we've seen performances from Newcastle in recent weeks, which have been really good. And Jamal Lascelles has come in alongside Fabian Schär, and he's been fantastic. The club captain has been around for a long time, but he came in the job against Kylian Mbappe in the Champions League, and then those Premier League performances, and that just makes it's an easy decision for Eddie Howe with regards to that starting 11 and considerations with regards to Sven Botman. So he's not quite there in terms of where he needs to be. You wouldn't rule out game week 10 for a possible return, but like I say, for this weekend, I fully expect Jamal Lascelles to be in the heart of that defence.
And with the Newcastle situation, there's a few kind of question marks or worries. Alexander Isak's another one. What's the latest with him?
Yeah, that's an adductor problem. He picked it up to the back end of the West Ham game, was unable to complete 90 minutes, and subsequent withdrawal from the international from the Sweden squad, and also has not trained with the Newcastle team. Now, Eddie Howe wouldn't go so far as to rule out the Swede, but it looks highly unlikely that he's going to recover. And certainly if he does, then I wouldn't expect to start in that 11. It's Callum Wilson who I'd be bringing back in, made the bench at West Ham, but has trained fully during the break, wasn't called up to England, so done some good warm weather stuff and looked sharp. So that's why we have him leading the Newcastle front line.
Now, Geordie Joe Linton's not in the 11. Is that because of how good Anderson and Longstaff have been playing, or is it because there's still worries about his injury situation?
With regards to the injury, that isn't really a factor, other than it's maybe affected a little bit of sharpness. So again, it's a hamstring problem. We did see him come off the bench last time and suffered that subsequent setback with the hammy. I just think Elliot Anderson's been a little bit unfortunate in recent times, lost out his place to Sandro Tonali, I think it was. Last time out, West Ham. So I think Elliot Anderson deserves that start. Joe Linton probably, in my opinion, will get minutes from the bench, and then hopefully, like I say, we'll have him fully fit and firing in the Champions League.
And you've mentioned him there, Sandro Tonali. The obvious kind of off the field news. Is that the reason why you haven't put him in?
I actually had him. I had this three-man midfield lined up before we heard the news of Tonali, and I just think maybe what's happening away from the pitch now, that just even sort of cements that decision to go with this three. You know, Eddie Howe spoke about he judges his players by performances on the training pitches, and he looks at his team in and around that, of which Tonali has been fantastic by all accounts. But look, I just think maybe you need to take him out the firing line a little bit. By all means, introduce him from the bench, give him some minutes that way. But yeah, look, it's a very, very difficult situation, and players are going to handle these circumstances in different ways. But like I say, for me, I think Elliot Anderson has been doing very well anyway. It's been very close between the two players, and I just think, with everything considered, Anderson gets the nod.
Nottingham Forest up next. The sad news, I guess, for their fans is that Iwioni, I'm terrible at pronouncing that one, he is not back in the team, still suffering with injury concerns. So Chris Wood obviously still does a good job, but, he's their preferred striker, isn't he, Ben?
Yeah, Woney is the club's leading scorer, started the season on fire. We heard prior to game week 8 of a setback on the, I'm not sure if he picked it up on the training pitches, but that adductor problem was suggested it could keep him out for around about a month now. Steve Cooper, and we know we take everything he says with a pinch of salt, said that he wasn't too far away from training fully. So I think realistically, maybe game week 10 is what we'll be looking at with him. So reprieve for Chris Wood for maybe one more game week.
And I guess any other important injury news for the team?
Fullback is, the major concern for Forest at the moment. We've seen Serge Aurier forced off against Crystal Palace. That's an adductor problem. Steve Cooper wouldn't go as far as to rule him out, but again, didn't suggest that he was really pushing for a place. So in terms of what we have available, because Ola Aina, he's injured as well. Also Tavares, the Arsenal loanee, and Argentine Gonzalo Montiel, he picked up a calf injury. So really, in terms of experienced fullbacks, we have to probably go with Nico Williams on the right and Toffolo on the left, unless Steve Cooper wants to change that formation and maybe bring in a third centre-back and tweak things a little bit further by bringing Ryan Yates in.
So up next is Sheffield United. They play Manchester United. I wouldn't be shocked if they caused a bit of a ruckus up at Manchester, but they have so many injury news things as well. And the latest blow for them was obviously Chris Basham with that kind of horror injury just before the international break. Really horrible injury that he had there. I mean, what's the latest there? And I guess, who's going to fill in for the team? Because the squad is already really pushed with the number of injuries that they've got in the team.
Yeah, it was a shocker. A local lad to me, in fact, just down the road from Chris Basham was actually from and went to a local college. So we wish him well in a speedy recovery. Hopefully, he's going to be getting out of hospital at some point this week. So he's been almost a couple of weeks. And according to Paul Heckingbottom, he's been climbing the walls. He's had 2 surgical procedures. The first one was a little bit of a tidy up. The second, where he's had that plated, there's a fractured dislocation. The 36-year-old, he's a very fit lad, naturally fit, good energy levels, good engine. So certainly nothing to suggest at this moment in time that, it's career ending or career threatening. It's one of those ones, look, it was horrible. Let's make no bones about it. But, we've seen players come back from similar types of injuries and worse and still play at the highest level. Whether Sheffield United will be at the highest level, if they can stay in the Premier League, remains to be seen. But, he's the latest in a long line of severe setbacks for the Sheffield United team. We bring Robertson back into that, that back three, as it were, with on the right-hand side, with Trusty probably occupying that place on the left. But like I say, he hasn't had the rub of the green, Paul Heckingbottom. They've been in most games, to a point, apart from that one against Newcastle where, we went napping and really, like I say, really went to town in one of those days where we couldn't really seem to miss in front of goal.
Yeah. So, hopefully situations change here, because it's quite sad for Sheffield United, because they are a small club with not very much budget, and it's another blow to a hard already start to the Premier League season. So Tottenham up next. As an Arsenal fan, I might say they're a small club as well. No, but in all seriousness, what is the latest with the injury news at Tottenham?
Yeah, two slight concerns that reared their head during the international break. One was for the skipper, Son. We know that he's been managing an ongoing groin problem affecting his training and managing his load on the game, and also game time on the pitch. But he did play against Vietnam. He scored, I think it was a 6-0 win. Nothing further to add other than that. It's something that the club are aware of. He's being managed. He's fit and he's available. Loosely termed, not fully fit, but when questioned, he says, we are footballers, and we'll play with injuries and knocks and niggles. We'll just get on with it. Christian Herrera also took a knock to the ankle for Argentina that forced him off. He looks to be fine. Of course, Tottenham don't play until Monday night, so that's going to be a big boost in terms of recovery. The other place up for potentially grab, Basuma, sent off last time out. That really means we've got the likes of Oliver Skip or Højbjerg vying for a place in midfield. In this instance, I've went for Pierre-Emile Højbjerg.
There you go. So up next are West Ham. What is the latest with the Hammers?
Generally, that starting 11 has been pretty much fixed for a lot of games this season. The couple of players that we have seen on the sidelines of recent times, Aaron Cresswell, Ben Johnson, and of course Fabianski last time out, who was withdrawn during the warm-up. We've seen all three of those players on the training pitches during the break, although David Moyes wouldn't go as far as to say that they were available. But if they were past fit, then it's purely just to sort of make up numbers on the bench. I don't really see too many changes in this starting 11.
So continuing over to the last team, and just to people, please do send in your last questions as well. Wolves, what is the team news for them?
One certain change from this lineup, and that's because we have a suspension for Mario Lemina. There was also another suspension for Nelson Semedo. He picked up 5 yellow cards caution. So we've got Mac Doherty coming back in. We hopefully, that's 2 out through suspension. The one coming back will be Bellegarde. He looked really impressive on his debut, grabbed a goal second time out. A little bit of petulant, bit of a coming together, lashed out deservedly, was shown a red card. He served his 3-match ban. We'll see how those 2 players missing out will affect this Wolves team, because they've put some really good performances in it. It's great to see Gary O'Neill doing well after the way he didn't come out and say so much about the fact that they were playing Bournemouth and he didn't want anything to do with him. And he's really quite a humble guy. I really like the way he speaks. He talked about it's not for me to decide whether I feel I should be in the job or not. The management decided I wasn't, and we move. This is football. But he's coming at Wolves. He's got them working hard. He's got them fit. He's got them hungry. They've pulled off some great performance, beat Manchester City, and we're very unlucky, probably not to leave Old Trafford with a share of the spoils when they're denied a penalty and deep in time added on.
Yeah, I absolutely love Gary O'Neill as well. I think he's a great character. In my opinion, I think it was so silly of Bournemouth to let him go. He worked miracles with that squad. He's doing the same with Wolves. Last few seasons I've been quite critical of the way Wolves have been managed as a team, whereas actually with Gary O'Neill, I think he's doing a great job there, and I've got a soft spot for them because of him. He's one of those, I guess, under the radar managers who's just doing a great job with the kind of assets that he's got. He hasn't spent any money at Wolves because he came in so late. He's not had that kind of capacity to mould a squad. He is literally a proper manager because he's just been given these players at Bournemouth, at Wolves, and he's getting great results as well. But let's hope everybody has some good results for this FPL Game Week 9. We are back into it. As always, we will be back again next week, so hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it as well. But from now, for the time being, we wish you the best of luck with the football, but also the best of health over the weekend, and we will see you again